Hi YouTube, I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Let's go ahead and get this rock and rolling. For those of you that don't know, and for those of you guys that are brand new, for some reason you decided, hey, you know what, I'm just going to jump into episode 3 of Mushoku Tensei because might as well. Hi, my name's Ed, I'm a psychologist. With that being said, let's just jump into it. Alright, I'm ready. Let's go. Yeah. Alright, stop. So, one of the best ways that I can go ahead and put this is like, in life, if someone, especially considering yesterday's episode or the episode on Friday where we talked about, sort of the expectations, and one of the biggest fears is or one of the biggest advantages that you can have is having someone there that helps you get across your trauma, or even like address or even confront aspects of whatever trauma you're going through. It's quite literally having someone like approach you and take your hand and be like, hey, one step at a time, we can do this. Not everything's going to magically disappear from one day to another, but it's really important to go ahead and have that for you instead of like antagonizing and whatnot. I.e., you know say that someone in the chat has fallen into a deep depression because of a breakup or something like that. I can almost guarantee you that, like, after a couple of months, you probably have heard this, especially if it was like a long-term relationship. Family members or whatever have started to get annoyed because of you're not processing your grief correctly, or because you're taking too long, because they have these timelines that for whatever reason all of us have to meet. If you don't meet those timelines, people start getting annoyed, people start questioning you, people start even like, it starts turning very negative very quickly. Instead of acknowledging the fact that we all heal at different speeds, we all need something or someone to maybe even vent to, maybe even like help us out throughout those journeys. So, how do I know about, or why am I touching on certain scenarios like this? So, say that that this relationship, this whatever, was the only actual relationship that you've had, that you've been able to talk to, that you've been able to interact with, that you've been able to do certain things, i.e., beat yourself. But outside from that, you don't really have any social groups, friends, gatherings, anything like that. How would it be if you had your siblings, your brother, your father, your whatever outside, banging on your door, quite literally demanding you to step out and go out to the club? What if they forced you to go out to the clubs or go out to, wherever, to meet new people? Would you be happy? Would you be okay? Would you feel like you're ready? Or would it be okay to take it one step at a time, i.e., have a friend, maybe even just step outside, take it step, like improv, like, I don't know, put it, small increments. There we go. Like, no, like, essentially, the best way that I can put it is like, in case you're ever in situations like that, or a family member, or anyone's like that, the best way that you can do it is, not force certain timelines on people. So, for example, even grieving, especially if they have low, like, they're high isolationalist, they don't have a lot of friends, or any friends for that reason. They're processing grief, they're processing an attachment breakup or anything like that. If I put a timeline on you, my timeline for healing is way different than your timeline for healing. I.e., I can probably process a lot of trauma, a lot of my information quickly because of my training. So let's say that something really bad happens. I can probably give myself a week, 2 weeks, be up and out of bed and like, doing stuff. As opposed to some individuals that it can take months. It can really like decimate your entire world. And if we go back into Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which was in the previous episode, what is that like? Having that security, having a self-esteem aspect taken away from you, having not just like your own personal health, but other belongings like taken in that regard. What if the person becoming intense about not having yet gotten over the trauma is yourself? And that's another layer. Great, good question. So I'll throw this out there to the chat. Let's say that like, you're putting timelines on yourself, and then you're not able to meet those timelines because of the trauma that you're going through. What happens then? Real question. You're probably going to go into a lower and lower state of mind. Self-care is probably not going to be applicable. You're probably going to have a lot of hatred, a lot of trauma is going to involve from just being a singular event that happened into now affecting your physical, emotional, and mental well-being. And that's the thing is, where does these timelines come from? Anyone care to answer? Because I know. Family, culture, your surroundings, your environment. again, Brofenbrenner's ecological system can give you a good input as to like how timelines and how certain expectations affect us. Exactly. So when looking at individuals like this, or when looking at individuals that have certain trauma, certain expectations to walk or not walk or do certain things at certain periods of time, how do you empathize, or how can you empathize correctly while at the same time not coming off as like, I don't know how to put it. Okay, let me shift the narrative here. You have an older person, yeah, or 30 something year old. Um, I guess by beauty standards in today's society, not the prettiest looking dude. He hasn't really gone out that much. Whatever may be happening, right? There's these expectations that, like, let's say for him to be able to do certain things or do say certain stuff in social scenarios, i.e., if you were playing Super Seducer, which if you don't know, it'll be uploaded soon on YouTube, more than likely. Like there's certain scenarios in which supposedly like you have to do certain things to stay within an active social group, right? Or naturally you setting yourself in that expectation. But let's say that like you're in a normal setting, you're a normal individual, normal beauty, normal rate, normal whatever. How do you, what is the difference between you and other people in that, like, you know, in lower or higher beauty standards for that set? There's different expectations. For you, it's to quite literally be you, be normal, right? For Super Mega Chad 9000, I don't know, dude. Like, his could literally be like, he's gotten so used to the routine of what game is that he can literally go in and do whatever he needs to do, joke around, be extremely stupid, and he could get away with certain stuff. If the individuals below a certain beauty standard, and yes, you'll have individuals that say, well, beauty doesn't matter, blah 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 blah. Sadly, I wish 1,000% that was true. I'll even say it, guys. Like, you know, we all have like, because of culture, because of environment, because of whatever, that we hold certain people to higher standards than others. So if you're normal, or if you're below normal or below average, whatever you want to rate it, say that you go out to a bar and you try and do something silly. What is the first thing that happens if you don't have a lot of self-esteem or confidence? You're probably going to get a lot of fucking looks. You're probably going to be judged almost instantly compared to someone that's probably of a higher beauty standard. Yeah, there's a lot of awkwardness that's going to happen, and so on. So now take that and apply it into society nowadays, i.e., if you're probably above, you say you go for a job, more than likely it's going to be a lot easier for you to go ahead and have that conversation. And again, self-esteem, it plays a huge role, as vice versa, with that being said, and, you know, experience. But the reason why I'm saying that is because even when looking at characters like this, right? Yeah, you're probably going to get laughed at. When looking at characters like this, what stops you, like, i.e., if the main character was an attractive individual before they got reincarnated, do you feel like there would be much of an issue? If the main character was Mega Chad 9000, do you feel like the controversial issues that, like, you know, i.e., hyper pervertedness that is present, or whatever, right, would be as big of a deal as it is now? Or is it just because, you know, of someone's past life, i.e., not being the most attractive individual, that it gets amplified in that regard because all of a sudden now it's creepy? And you can use that same thing with Giga Chad woman, Sigma woman 9000 as well, right? In that mindset, as opposed to, you know, a regular below average individual going through a reincarnation like that. So yeah, so throwing that out there, you know, just so that you guys have this set in mind, this sociological set. Um, yeah, and throwing this out there, sociological set, because sometimes that can play a huge role, especially if, you know, certain things are popular, certain forms of media are popular, so on and so forth. But anyway, we're not even 30 seconds in, guys. Fuck.
もちろんだ。あなた、ルディが自分で外に。
体が弱
いのかと心配したが、時が経つのはあっという間だな。そうね。そんなこと思ってたんですか？全然泣かなかったからな。
Oh, I really want to see him actually, like, I don't know, make friends or something. That would be Amazing. Grow your attachments.
長男がしっかりしていて何が不満なんですか。いや、不満はないんだが。もっとグレイラット家の後継ぎとしてふさわしい人間になれとか言ってもいいんですよ。
Yeah.
そういうことならガールフレンドの一人でも連れてきなさい。わかりました。では母様に引けを取らないような女性を探してきます。
Oh.
それじゃあ行ってきます。
Vods, just for your knowledge, I did not read the episode name. Just throwing that out there. It's just like when you said the episode name, I just clicked episode 4 and continued. I didn't really pay attention to the episode name or whatever. But anyway, one of the one of the big things is like in general is like I wonder, especially knowing that the parents are still quite young and anything like that. I wonder if we're actually going to get a time skip, or if we're actually going to see him go into an adulthood, or see how that interaction is like. If he's going to have any siblings, either younger brothers, younger sisters, or whatever, and what that relationship might look like. Is it going to be strained? Is it going to be okay? How would one, especially, say that he's, throughout this entire time, he's learning magic, he's growing or whatever, at an abnormal speed. How do you transfer that onto another individual, and make logical sense? So, for example, if you have siblings, if he has like little brothers or whatever, and they're actually able to understand magic, how do you explain your magic conduit system to your brothers to make sense, right? Or even vice versa. And also, what does that mean, like, in that regard? Just seeing as though there's attachment issues in general, not having sort of that like main attention, if that makes sense, because being a single child can be cool, but then like not having that attention on you all the time might be a little hard, or an adjustment period, or it might just be simple. I don't know, depending on. Aww. It's too peaceful. I don't know. I'm always like, where's the moon? I'll mute it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm always like, especially with really peaceful scenes like this. Yeah, where's the moon? What's gonna happen? What evil's coming? Or are we just gonna get more character development? The moon is always watching. Yeah, let's go, guys. What the fuck are y'all doing? Yeah. Oh no. Oh no, no, no. Let me just say something. Y'all, kids can either be the absolute wonders, like funny, and also I'll say this here, guys, or y'all in general, if y'all are grown-ups and y'all don't want to have kids, don't have kids. It's okay. I know that there's cultures out there that will try and push you to have kids. I'm reiterating it because it's a big theme in like general about like people feeling the need or not need to go ahead and have children through a certain time period. It's okay, y'all. Take your time, process that. But kids can be the absolute best or the absolute worst at times, right? And some of you guys might be wondering, how can kids be so cruel? You have to remember, your adult brain, your human brain isn't fully matured. And we'll even put it sometimes, like there's new data that's come out that's like 25, I believe. It's way past 21. I know that for sure. So just keeping that in mind, like it's crazy to think about, just certain aspects. Granted, there are certain time periods where you expect moral senses to develop quicker, or rationalizing or logical areas to develop quickly. But I will go ahead and state that, like, when encountering certain scenarios like this, especially with kids that are bullies, you have to be careful, because the number one thing that you can see with a lot of, like, even adults that are bullies and whatnot, what do they do when you catch them off guard, when, you beat them up, or when you find the flaw in whatever they're doing? They twist the narrative. And a lot of narratives get twisted into, like, almost very childish-like behaviors, i.e., for example, if I was going up against someone, right? Say I was working in a company, turns out that this guy has been bullying all the, like, underworkers, as you know, the people that just started, freshmen that just started, called out his behavior, you know, sort of that he's not really doing his work, that the other people are doing the work for him and he's just taking credit for it. What do you think will end up happening? Either A, fight, right? He's going to try and fight against it. B, flight. He's going to try and run away from the responsibilities that are there. B, or C, freeze, which is a common thing, which is not knowing what to do when presented with confrontation. Or D, Vaughn, try and suck up that someone actually stood up to you. That's a common 4 behaviors for any threat, for any big trauma or anything in life in general. Why am I throwing this out there? If that individual decided to fight, if that, especially the group, the more that there's groups, the more that there's negotiate and compromise. Well, you have to even think about it like this. What is negotiation and compromise but an action? What is an action but fighting? Fawning. You can even say for that reason as well. Why? Because you're trying to compromise, but you're trying to compromise towards the behavior of like now using certain like feelings of either protectiveness or love or whatever to try and compromise, or you're using action in terms of like, I'm not going to go ahead and take this. The action I'm going to take is to go ahead and compromise and say that I did 50% of the work, they did 50% of the work, or something like that. Then you can get into narcissistic individuals who will just take complete credit and so on and so forth. But what I'm trying to get at is simply that, you know, people like this will flip the narrative. They'll probably go over to someone that's on top of you and they'll try and say, you know what ended up happening? Turns out that Ed was the one that was bullying everyone because Ed is such a bully. You don't know it, but all the other people that barely came into the company, they're the ones that are doing his work. You know, he might try and shift this narrative. He's going to try and beat someone to the punch first, you know. That's just the way a lot of people are, sadly. That's also the sign of someone didn't really grow up in a healthy environment to be able to process information and their own shit. That's what I believe, at least. Oh.
まあびっくり。驚くほどの美少年。ショタコンのお姉さんがいたら一発でジュンってなるだろう。
Yes, the no use strategy, yep.
ちょっと前かがみになって。額に赤い宝石のようなものがついた種族には絶対に近づいてはいけません。
額は綺麗なおでこちゃん。
Bro, is this not a...
この子は危ないスペルド族ではない。てか
You're using... Is this not a chick?
君ね、ああいうのはやり返さないとつけ上がるよ。君は僕を見ても平気なの？師匠が魔族だったからね。
Just like the voice, the way that like everything is like, you know, portraying even the eyes and stuff. Is this not a chick? No, that's a dude. He's also using he a lot. Like, he's absolutely skirted. Sorry, it's just like, yeah. I think it's probably because of my growing up. Like, a lot of the my friends that were girls that were when I was growing up, they looked a lot like guys in that sense, like short hair, pretty much everything. In that sense, even dressed up tomboyish and whatnot. One of them even wore a hat for like I remember a whole year when I first met them, and I thought they were a boy. So yeah, I'm confused. But yeah, tomboy supremacy. Yeah, they're still one of my closest friends. They're awesome. To be fair, Izzy, yeah. Huh, maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe it's like Armin. I don't know, dude. Aw, twins. Sylph. That's a cool name. Twins, yeah.
何して遊ぼうか。わかんない。友達と遊んだことないから。
Oh.
きっと今まで友達がいなかったのだろう。
My heart. This breaks my heart every single time. Any story like this.
さっきの多分ね。興味あるの？よし、どうせ暇だし特訓してみるか。
Oh, my heart. Their ears even move. when they're excited. His ears were moving when he was excited. Oh, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Friends. That is adorable. Oh, well, good on him. He's actually being able to make attachments and stuff. Although what's terrifying now, let me throw this out there. This is an absolute theory, a psychulturist theory, if you will. Yeah. So this is a psychulturist theory 101. Yeah, get your tinfoil hats ready. Get your tinfoil and everything. Get a moon. Get the moon going. So here's where we can do a breakdown almost immediately. So, and by what do I mean by a breakdown? Yeah, we're seeing progression in psychology and like in any realism. If this was completely based in realistic nature, property, whatever you want to go ahead and say, now you can start like a good author, a good writer, a good whatever would introduce attachments, right? Because we've already understood that one of his main issues is attachment in general, attachment trauma, attachment processing, 101 locations in this. So what would happen if, say, what would happen if, say, I don't know, I'm gonna use myself as an example, right? On Friday, or turns out Ed has really hard issues making attachment and making friends. On Friday, he made a bunch of new friends. And then, they started hanging out, they started to grow together, all of that. But turns out that attachments that they made, boom, just disappeared one day to another. They ghosted him, they stopped talking to him. Maybe new phone number change, he just forgot to message Ed. Yeah, I'm talking to myself in third person. This is probably the best way to process it. And, putting myself in Rudius's shoes, if I were to go through something like that, something that he went through, what would that do? Especially if, like, say that he's a grown-up and he goes through something where, like, he's now starting to date or now starting to figure individuals out, and attachments like this are just ripped. What happens? Anyone in chat want to take a guess? Because I can take like 4, but I want to see if chat can nail where my thoughts are going for. We'll play some music. All right, I guess I'll answer one of them. Immediately, what I'm seeing is a relapse, and specifically if, say that you have, yeah, it could definitely be, but like one of the biggest relapses that I see in that regard is like if you don't have any of the natural supports in general. So say that he's a grown-up, no longer access to parents. Trauma happens again. Whatever attachment he has are separated, breakup, cheating, ghosting, whatever you want to go through that regard. You can definitely bet that whatever trauma was in the past is going to come flourishing towards the future again. To what severity? Probably not the same, because you've already experienced it and you're able to go ahead and like understand what that can mean, and like, you're probably still going to grieve it. Your parent subscription has expired, exactly. You're still probably going to grieve it, but then you're probably going to have to like stand up, dust yourself off, and take that first step a lot quicker than last time. Like it is one of the biggest things on there, and that's why it's like, and of course this is all based on realism. This is just a moonhead, 5-head, crackpot theory, tinfoil hats all over the place. But if you want to make a character grow, and if you want to make a character start processing their trauma and like in a realistic way, this is what you do. You have them relapse. You have them face their traumas, even face like certain aspects that they're not comfortable sharing, or they're not comfortable talking about just yet, if that makes sense. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's just a crackpot theory if this decided to stay in realism, because i.e. Clanad, we're not going to go that far. There's some weird supernatural elements, and it's really hard to talk about like based in realism when you have a lot of supernatural elements that are thrown, like Deus Ex Machina and random shit. Not just Clanad, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Like any show like that, where all of a sudden it can be like, oh yeah, it turns out the god of magic showed up and was like, yo, guess what? You're learning magic today, or something silly. I don't know. That's my point. Like, if it's based in just like a scenario where everything is consistent throughout.
ですか？
そうだ。はは、なるほど。シルフをいじめてたクソガキか。
Dude.
父様がどういう話を聞いたのかはわかりません。
違う。悪いことをしたらまずはごめんなさいだ。
Because communication.
言い訳をするな。
Bro.
怒鳴りつけて謝らせ。
Oh.
大人のやることは手っ取り早くて羨ましいですね。
ルーディ。
父様。
You want to know what he reminds me of? You want me to be 100% real with you? Now that he's gone ahead and done this, and now like I can make certain assertions. Rudy's father reminds me of individuals that like in a breakup would get mad at the kid for siding with mom. Rudy's father reminds me right now of like individuals that are like, oh, you didn't do your homework? Oh, that sucks. I guess like you're not 100%. Oh, yeah, guess what? Yeah, I'll go hard on Paul, because anyone that's not willing to go ahead and like rationalize or even take the time to talk, you know, like, why did this happen? It's a lot better, a lot quicker to try and understand the perspective as to maybe why a scenario happened than to go into directly hitting a kid, even slapping, especially if you get triggered by a kid. Emotionally, you're saying 110 words that like I don't even got to fit them in myself. You just said it by slapping yourself, by slapping the kid. So with scenarios like that, this is exactly why I'm pointing it out. Like, Paul, at this point in time, seems like the type of individual that emotionally he'll pass on, he'll project his frustrations onto Rudy. Or he'll probably project it onto family members. Or if they're, like, you know, in the future, like, whatever ends up happening, both successes and failures, I wonder how much, like, one can handle. So, like, i.e., if Rudy becomes to be, say, a complete failure in life. Granted, probably not going to happen because of what we've seen, but like if he becomes like a complete and absolute failure, do you feel like Paul would talk it out with him? Or do you feel like he would just, I don't know, project a lot of his own insecurities onto his kids along with those expectations? Which, don't get me wrong, a majority of parents do project expectations, false expectations onto their kids. We can't, yeah. But it's sort of that regard. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, you an adult. Act like an adult, you know?
僕は今までできる限り良い子でいるように努力してきました。
それは関係ないだろう。
いいえ、あります。僕は父様に信頼してもらえるよう頑張ってきたんです。父様は僕のそんな言い訳は一切聞かず、怒鳴りつけて手を挙げたんです。
ちょっと待て。何があったんだ。
言い訳は
Oh, now you're saying it?
家訓なのだと周囲に伝えましょう。
My dude.
そして大きくなったら家を出て、二度とグレイラットとは名乗らないようにします。
Oof.
そんな家の人間だと名乗るのが恥ずかしいので。
I mean, I only did a little bit of damage, but Rudy just went in and like obliterated this man. Oh shit.
言い逃れ続けてきた男。ましてや、今回は完全なる父さんが悪かった。話してくれ。
Yeah, easy, same.
ルーデウスはあの年で水星級魔術師。ちょっときつめに叱ってやる。
Okay. Let's talk about power dynamics real fucking quick. We got a Karen, right? We have a Karen that clearly, I'm sorry, but a majority of parents know how their children act, unless they're like straight up like, you know, just completely project another persona. But a majority of parents know how their kids may act or what situations may happen. But we have this Karen going up to Rudy's dad, who's clearly trains every single day, right? And it's like, apologize. First off, get off my property. Second off, like, what are you talking about? Dang. No, maybe instead of like yelling at me, maybe, I don't know, maybe you should like be a parent, parent your child. Damn. I don't understand individuals like this unless it's like a full on like, you know, it's been happening repeatedly for weeks or whatever. And then like, you know, just going out and yelling at another like parent instead of being like, "Hey, do you know what happened?" Man, man, they're all fuck off, yeah, essentially.
例のクソガキどもが懲りずにやってきたが、すべて撃退した。その度に母親がうちに怒鳴り込んできた。
Oh, that
どうやら
fucking
子供のこ
Karen.
とというより、パウロのことが好きらしい。子供を出しにして会いに来ていたというわけだ。バカバカしい。
She's more interested in my dad than her kid. Fuck. Hey, yo, but for real, Rudy is. What's interesting about your dad though is like, I don't know, he kind of, you know, the first two episodes gave me the impression that your dad might be down to get jiggy with it. he might be a Giga Chad 9005 if you know what I'm talking about. Like, he might be. He just like, I don't know how to put it, like moral resistance. Again, we don't know what the cultural thing is at this time. We don't know what's acceptable, not acceptable, so on and so forth. But if he has a similar drive to you in any way, shape, or form, I wouldn't put it past him. I mean, I did say, damn, he can swallow. So yeah, I mean, there you go. Oh, friend, you're back.
なんちゃって。この半年ちょいでシルフの
Oh,
マリア
damn.
かなり増えた。
How is he not a she? My heart. Oh, my instantly just of how cute they are. Like, it's like, oh.
聴中に感じる魔力が指先に集まっていく感じわかる
Not as a metaphor.
あれを演出
Because of how cute they are, friends.
感覚でやっていることを教えるの
True.
は難しい。
True. Actually, Kraith, I would accept it. That wouldn't even be an
や
issue.
はり無影
Whoa. Yeah, everyone's welcome here. How can you not? Oh my gosh, my heart. This is adorable, though.
男の俺でも素直に思う。クソ、羨ましいぜ。
There you go, dude. There you go. Shit, please. Thanks for the update. Alright, guys, I'm gonna quickly take this off just for safety.
坊ちゃまとお友達の方
I can probably leave the audio still on, yeah?
見えちゃうぜ
Bruh, don't tell me this body language.
手あげて
だって生前じゃ人から笑われるような息子だったら
Okay, dude.
笑ったりしないから
Bro, I've never been that big dick in a locker room either, but come on, like, come on, you can't, and y'all know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, there's that one guy that comes into a locker room and everyone's like, oh, okay, we all know who's here, you know, like, but you don't gotta poke a joke at yourself in that expense. Like, come on, dude. That's yeah, this is I'll talk about it once we get there. Don't force your homies.
そんな
So I was right? You know what? I'll wait. Give it a second. So 17 what?
彼は彼女だったんだ。
I fucking knew it. Thanks for clearing it up. Oh, 17 what? 1750, I believe?
どうしてあんなことをしたんだ
ごめんなさい
Sorry, y'all. I need to stop and go. It's 1541 to 1725. All right, I think I can. I'll wait till they're out of the bathtub real quick, and then I'll clear it up. I will go ahead and say this: if you didn't know, granted, continuing on with pressure, whatnot, and people try and like implement the whole ideology of like, you know, a soul or something like that, right? But if you didn't know, and like you were just with your friends, and you know, if you've ever gone to an onsen, or you also have to take the cultural consideration and stuff, like you can joke around and do a bunch of stuff like that, but like, you know, if your friend doesn't want to take off their towel at the onsen or at wherever, you might want to talk about boundaries there. And I think this is something that's clear that need to be addressed when it comes to Rudius. You know? Like, yeah. Yeah, best way that I can put it. Like, if your friend... That's, yeah, homies respect homies. Homies, y'all gotta understand what boundaries are as well, you know? If your homie doesn't want to take anything off, your homie don't want to take anything off, you know? Like, yeah, you know, you can pick your friends, but you don't pick your friend's nose. That's the best way to put it. However, now putting in it in the perspective of kids and not really having any social interactions before then, or anything like that, in that regard, how awkward is your first interactions when you were trying to make friends? On the real, how awkward was your first interactions as to establishing what was and was not okay in a friendship? If that makes sense. It's really important to go ahead and throw that out there, because I feel like this might automatically be judged like a, oh no, blah, 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 blah. But then, like, putting into perspective, this might be like someone's actual first friend. And it's like, how do you, what a weird way to establish boundaries of what play and it's not. And it's a good thing that even, like, you know, it looks like his dad's in the tub with him, you know, like, yeah, best way for me to put it, if that makes sense. You know, that's a good parent talk to have with your kids, like, and that's a talk that should have happened beforehand between parents and child as to what's okay and not okay. Thank you for the heads up. There you go. All right, before blaming the child, as a therapist, before blaming the child, what is the first thing you think we'd look at? Anyone want to take a guess? Say that this case was presented to a therapist, a psychologist, as like an incident that happened. What do you think would be the first thing we'd look at? The parents. Abso-fucking-lutely. The papa. No, just the parents in general. It would be the first thing we'd question, and the first thing that, like, we'd start to ask is, like, number one, have you guys had the talk with your kid? You know, like, consent talk. Have you guys talked about boundaries? What is and what is not acceptable? You know, is he mimicking behavior that he... Because kids are really experts at mimicking behavior that they see from home. You know, this is taking away any supernatural stuff, anything to do with, like, remembering past lives or anything like that. It's just, if this case was presented to me as a therapist, what is the first thing that we would go ahead and look into is the family dynamics. What is going on at home, you know? And even worse than that, as adults, we're not going to go that far. The first couple of episodes, we heard mom and dad, you know, going at it. As adults, if you hear that, how many of y'all, or if you've ever walked in on your parents, how many of y'all have been traumatized? I'll raise my hand. Do I want to experience that again? No, right? I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it. So what's the best thing to do? I don't know. Maybe, like, parents, lock your doors. Parents talk about, like, you know, parents talk about, like, I don't know, maybe muffling sounds, I don't know, getting some soundproof for more protection in the walls or something like that, right? Because yeah, and sadly, you're absolutely right. A majority of people are uncomfortable having the sex talk, having to talk about consent, having to talk about boundaries and what it means, you know, having to talk about, like, even talking about, like, hey, you know what, if you do have multiple partners, make sure that you have this talk every single time, you know, about what is okay and what is not okay, and the fact that things can change. You know, people are very, very uncomfortable when it comes to talking about this with their kids, and that's often why a lot of parents will go to a therapist and be like, tell my kid exactly what, and it's like, you're their parent. You know, like, what are you talking about? So that's exactly why it's super duper important that, like, if you are parents, start having talks with your kids about consent, boundaries. It doesn't necessarily have to go 1,001% of the way there if you're uncomfortable talking about sex, but be comfortable opening up a topic about what consent is, what our boundaries are, you know, be open to talk about what is appropriate emotions to share. And, you know, that sometimes, you know, say even with sharing a toy or with anything like that, like, if you're not comfortable sharing a toy, you can say no, you know, and most importantly, make them comfortable. And especially if they're kids, talk about, like, you know, hey, you know what, if they're uncomfortable around family members. And I hate to bring this up because it's super duper important, but a lot of cultures don't do it. You know, yeah, just because you're comfortable with, you know, a family member, brother, sister, uncle, a cousin, whatever it may be, doesn't mean your child is. And you have to listen to that. Don't force people into relationships that they don't want to be as a parent as well. So please have that talk. Please be open to having that conversation, and don't rely on the education system or therapists to go ahead and have that talk for you. You're the parent, do it. Anyway.
お前の悩みをシルフィエットの前であからさまな態度に表すんだ。今あなたに避けられて悩んでますってな感じでな。するとどうなると思う?
Oh God, please don't. You're giving him super seducer lessons. Please don't. Oh gosh.
それでダメだったらどうします？
そん時はまた聞け。次の手を教えてやる。
なるほど。2の手3の手があるんですね。
ってことで、ほら。
Oh. Why did you know that Paul would probably be like, you should talk to her about the strawberry test. Paul would say some stupid shit like that. He played through all of Super Seducer without a single fail. Yeah, I mean, Paul, the best way that I can put it. If you guys don't know what Super Seducer is, it is the cringiest dating game, love guru game, dating sim out there. It'll probably be up on YouTube by the time this video comes out. At least one episode will. Yeah. Oh, that's the best way I can put it. Watch it, and then you'll understand a lot of the references that we're giving away here. Oh, friends.
だったら普通に接しよう。俺は精一杯新しい世界ができた友達を大切にするのでいいのだ。
My heart, that's just friends.
しかし、俺はこの小さな息子に何を教えてるんだ。
Yeah, Paul, what are you teaching him at this age? Let me move the face cam real quick. Oh, okay. Is it now okay to ship? I think it's okay. I would love to see them get together. Like that's so cute, so wholesome. Like, especially now that they're like, they've had that ability to go ahead and talk, and you know, you've encountered that first like friend step or whatever. No, I mean like just like them like being together as friends, even doesn't have to be like romantic. You know, just like platonic like friends or anything like that. Like, yeah, and not to mention completely normal. Even as kids, your parents will probably ship you with another little friend that you probably made when you were in elementary school, middle school. Pretty much anytime, for example, I was like, oh yeah, mom, I made a friend. They're always like, ooh, y tu novia? Like, you know, like sort of poking fun, which is like, ooh, and your girlfriend type thing, you know, no matter what, even if they were just your friend. But he is 30 plus man. What do I think about this argument? I think at the moment, how don't you know that the person you're dating is not 30 years older than you? That their soul is 30 years older than you in a realistic sense, you know? In that regard, I feel like people like, again, and I'll use that argument. If people have this issue with age and him being a kid, but yet don't have an issue with the 500-year-old loli when it comes to like the female side in that regard. You know, I feel like there's a lot of people like when it comes to age specifically, in this sense, I'm taking it by the age that he physically is, because mentally there are a lot of kids that act a lot more mature, that feel as though they're like, you know, if you're ever having a conversation with them, they're older than most people in high school, mentally speaking. That doesn't change his physical age, you know? So that's that's pretty much it. Yeah. And that's sort of the classification of it, like where it's like I don't know. Like I feel like there would be a lot of people that would try and like jump in here and try and use age as a despair, like to try and take this down, but yet why are you using someone's age from the past when it's not really their age, it was the mentality, right? Because I feel like people will probably have issues with the mentality that this person have rather than like, because he's like 5 or 10 at the moment, right? Something like that. And that's the point, Pizza Krusty. It's like, for example, so far the sexualization issues make sense with the atonement that like a kid is hypersexual, hasn't had a boundary talk, hasn't had to talk about consent, and this is all due to family systems, and even as mentioned in chat, a majority of people, even nowadays, they don't have that chat, So it's such an interesting concept. Yeah, and you're hitting the nail on the head, Professor, right there. A lot of people don't have issues when it comes to like certain scenarios like that, right? Like what was it? For example, Beako. We're not gonna go that far with 3-0. If Beako decided to go for someone, right, that was say looked young, how many people do you think would raise an issue? If that person like looked around their age. If Beako decided to go for someone that was 500 years old and looked like an old sage, I bet you that there would be people screaming at the top of their lungs, regardless, right? Because of that scenario, there's a weird double standard when it comes to certain things like this. But that aside, you can at least say that like, in Beako's case, it's quite literally like, they lived so many years, they've experienced so many things, and they haven't like started over from like a brand new body, a little kid, whatever. So what is their actual age, Yeah. And that's such a big thing to think about. And I think so far the sexuality in this, or the sexual aspects that have been shown in this, is in line with as I said, is in line with the character that has had some attachment issues, that has had a lot of like, I guess, trauma in their past, that is kind of sucks at socializing, that hasn't had consent, that has weird family dynamics, that, so on and so forth. Like, it's an interesting concept to look at. But I can definitely see why some people would get triggered, and like why this can be triggering for some people, especially if they've experienced anything on the other side, or on one side in general. And for that, I'd say like, just because you feel triggered about up to now, and I will say this, up to now, if you feel triggered about any of the things that are popping up at the moment, up to now, know that like, and I'll answer your question, Master. Up to now, logically and through a psychological lens, it makes like narrative sense for Rudius to go through certain actions that he's done. And you guys might be like, well, but why? Again, I've explained that. Clearly there's been no boundary training. Clearly there's been no talks about consent. And yes, you can have talks about consent even with the kid as young as 3, 4, and 5. It doesn't have to be sexual consent, but it can be talks about, such as sharing toys. No means no. Certain options and talks like that, And it's okay. And you know what? Like, I empathize with anyone that feels uncomfortable or even triggered throughout this entire thing. Don't think that I'm patronizing with one side or the other, completely going off of one side or the other. This is to bring up discussion points. This is a point about like discussing about the boundaries and the lines that are set in anime. And sometimes, even as like, if you're ever a director, if you're ever in theater, if you ever want to go ahead and improve a subject, even in psychology, you have to try and like carefully manage the lines and expectations that audiences have. So yeah, and it's interesting, and it's completely, in case that you guys do feel triggered and you guys came in and watched this and this was your first show, there are other shows out there that we do a deep dives on. It's not necessarily this one, but I want you guys to have that option available, that if you guys ever want to go ahead and have talk about this, like this is available for all of you. And for those of you, because I can already tell, just like in like any anime that we start, there's always going to be people that like hold on to like one specific part, and then like a year down the road, they're going to be like, look, like we can totally blah, 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 and like try and spread FUD or anything like that. Know that like all of this is clearly for entertainment purposes. Like, I'm doing this because I want to. I'm doing this for fun. It's not like I'm making $1 million or any aspect of this. I'm literally doing this to spread mental health awareness, to bring up concepts and talks that a lot of reactors, a lot of analysis, like, aren't going to bring that up. A lot of people, like, will literally watch a show and they'll be like, and like, you know, like, just do stupid faces for 10 minutes or under 10 minutes. And then be like, the show was pretty good. I can't wait for what's coming next. And they get like 50,000 views. They monetize it and they make quite a bit of money off of like every video. Meanwhile, you'll probably have me doing an hour-long rant and analysis about topics, actual topics. And I know people aren't into that. And if that's not your thing, then cool. You know, it's totally okay if that's not your thing to like have full-on conversations. But I'm not going to rip off a show. And this is also not a substitute for the actual show. This is just my thoughts as a psychologist, as a therapist, as to what and how I would like look at this, how I'm thinking as the character, how I'm empathizing as an individual. Yeah. Until now, do I think the non-TOS scenes are justified for the narrative? So far, yeah, absolutely. I actually do think a majority of the non-TOS scenes are justified. Again, look at sort of the scenario, the environment, the family dynamics, the pretty much everything, and you can kind of look at it and be like, a kid would react like that. Or like a kid would do certain scenarios like that. Granted, you can say that meant like he has mental maturity far beyond his age, but yeah. That's best way to put it. I don't care about that, dude. Just give me a picture of the thing. All right, there we go. How many of y'all have seen this? At some point in their life, you know, talking about like the psychosexual stages of Freud. Yeah. There's stuff where you get potty trained and people like playing with their butt. You've never seen this. I know some people see this at like high school or early ages or whatever, you know. What if I told, yeah, well, even with some of this, what if I told you that like this isn't actually what's in contention compared to like a lot of other things? Yeah, like penis envy, for example, that's something that is in contention. Psychosexual stages is something that like you can still observe in a lot of children and stuff like that. So one of the biggest things that if you find yourself, i.e., hey, I've seen that before. I'm glad. If you find yourself, i.e., you know what, like, for example, no, mom sex complex is different. Mom sex complex, like Oedipus and whatnot, as a different theorem inside of Freud's, like, you know, things. That's like, you know, sort of contentious. So is penis envy and whatnot. Attachment and whatnot is sort of, you know, for the most part, you can go ahead and say that like it's kind of the same. You can content that as well. But let's go with like, for example, thank you, Professor. That's exactly what I was getting at. Fetish development and how one gets through something like that. No, not everything is contested in contemporary psychology, and even in sexology, one of the biggest things that you can actually start to look into is the disruption in any of the psychosexual stages to try and see, for example, there are some people with oral fixations, i.e., you know, you can even let's do this. I forgot what that kink is called, where people dress up as little babies, put on diapers, and suck on. Yeah, I know, we're going into that. Yeah, and I know this might be uncomfortable for some of y'all, but there's a purpose for this, and there's a purpose why we're talking about this in Mushoku Tensei. But you guys know what I'm talking about, right? There are people that, like adults, full-grown adults, that literally, like, revert themselves into children as a kink, like, i.e. wearing diapers and putting on, like, bibs or whatever, or, like, the sucking things. Or some people that, like, will literally just focus on sucking in general, like, breast action, whatnot. We're not kink shaming here, but I'm throwing this out there because you can clearly tell that there might have been a disruption between the oral stages and what will later on be known as like the anal stage inside of a psychosexual. Yeah, easy, exactly. At some point in there, right? And granted, you guys can go ahead and throw this out there and be like, you know what? But like developmentally, I was completely okay as a child, and I developed completely okay. Yeah, but which ones did you like as a child to do more? At what age did you start like responding to yourself and finding yourself sexually? At what age did you start masticating without saying the word because of TOS, and so on and so forth? At what age did you start, understanding that, like, for example, food, I eat food, it brings out this warmness that's almost orgasmic. You can put that with like in between any of the stages, So it's just like putting that in there. And you can also even put in, like, for example, having an avoidance with the latency stage, i.e., I'm going to go chill with the boys and forget about, the opposite sex for a while. Or the other sexes in general. But that's the purpose that I'm getting at. Yeah. The purpose that I'm getting at is that quite literally, like, you could have multiple deviations, right? But that food, it's true. And that's the thing, is a lot of people are like, yeah, but like nothing happened to me as a child. And it's like, as a kid, did you ever value food more than like anything else? Then you had an oral fixation in that, as a teenager, even like growing up, who's the best boy? As a teenager, even growing up, is food like either not there or extremely there, or was that the only way that you could, like, sometimes people find food as orgasmic, and that's a point. Or even with the anal stages, hey, sometimes you take a good dump and it feels amazing. You can't judge that. Like, sometimes you're able to go ahead and, like, go through certain stages and feel pleasure or feel certain things. And this is not to kink shame in any way, shape, or form, but I'm just talking about disruptions and sometimes how we're able to find ourselves and in certain areas of a psychosexual theory. Now, this is one aspect of psychology and doesn't mean it's 100%, proven true, whatever. It's just a way that you can go ahead and look at a fixation that a kid is having, i.e., especially when it comes to like the latency stage and development, and even like sex in general. Where are they at? Where are they having issues? Where are they, like, having all of this fixation? So super duper important to look at. And especially like if you yourself find yourself in any of these kinks, no kink shaming or any like stage like that, you can start to maybe even like plot out like what happened, what was happening during that time, why was that happening, So you have that you can go ahead and look into. Super duper cool. I think it's one of the coolest things out there in terms of like having different stages, different theories that one can look at and understand. Give me a second. Where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Here we go. Ooh, I wanted to touch on this just because I wanna address a bit of the thing here. This is something that I was talking about, just in general. Like, these words are still used. Granted, some of these have changed and none of them have the same meaning, but it's something I want to go ahead and talk about because some of y'all really need a fucking lesson on this, and I'm sorry. So, what am I talking about here? I'm talking about defense mechanisms. And defense mechanisms don't just necessarily arise from anxiety, but they arise from trauma. Yes, I'm giving you guys a lesson. And those of you guys on YouTube, because some of y'all start throwing out their psychological words like, oh, this is not psychology. And it's like, really, what's your degree, dude? Like, I'm sorry, a bachelor's is not going to cut it. You need a master's level. You need a master's level or higher, licensure, a PhD, something. Don't just come at me with basic knowledge of psychology, talking about foot in the door or something you picked up off of TikTok. Because let me tell you guys something, pseudopsychology is not psychology. It has to be peer reviewed. And even if it's in contention, you can still bring up general points and be like, how can this tie into attachment? So let me go ahead and say this because... So, yeah, let me go ahead and say this. I have my master's and I have licensure masters. And the Netherlands, it was otherwise known as a doctoratus. But in the United States, it's a master's degree with licensure in the areas that I'm studying in, i.e., being a therapist. Exactly. And also, the difference, in case you guys are wondering, the difference between a master's and a PhD in psychology has nothing to do with actually seeing clients. It's quite literally doing another thesis paper aside from your master's one. And my master's one was already 120 pages that all of us had to do in our cohort. So, yes. My thesis paper was actually on relationship dissolution and attachment theorem, i.e., how long does it take for you to recover from a breakup in a healthy way? Yeah, exactly. Anyway, how about I save this image and then I bring it up, yeah? Let me save the image and then I'll bring it up. That way we can zoom in. Give me a second. Blah, blah, blah. Huh. Or maybe it doesn't want to be brought up. Why are you doing this, my friend? Why are you doing this, my friend? It's a shy image. Yeah, it's a shy image. There we go. But anyway, I hope that's a little better. But yes, you guys are pretty much having like a full-on lecture, and probably a lot funner lecture, because imagine just having dry text like this the entire time, like nothing to relate it to. I wish a professor would teach, like, defense mechanisms, talk about psychosexual stages and other stages on an anime or a video game or something cool like that. Are you kidding me? I would have picked up all the information like that and instead of spending like days and days trying to figure out what some of this meant, I'll link it. I have to find it again because it's somewhere in my emails. But yeah, I'll link it whenever I can. I'll probably put it on Discord or something. But anyway, so what is some of the first things that you guys see from here that is almost automatically like should make you guys aware? What I see on here are a bunch of words that people like to use but have no fucking meaning or idea what the meaning is. And yeah, I am gonna cuss, right? Because, for example, yeah, that's a lot of words. You'll have people that are like, oh yeah, no, what you don't understand is that Rudius is like, he's repressing a lot of his emotions onto others. And it's like, you mean projection? You have no idea what this means. Like, please stop, Yeah, exactly. That they have lost their meaning, or for a psychologist, if you use some of these, it's going to throw us off. So, for example, right, and this is how you know that Rudius is using so many defense mechanisms inside of it, that it's almost funny, like when people are like, well, he's not acting in what a natural way might look like, and it's like, yeah, this might be a long episode. Yeah, actually, he is acting in a completely normal way. In fact, he's using what a lot of us use almost on a daily basis. Okay, let's talk about this. I'm gonna start off with some of the most clear answers of what projection is, yeah? Oh, and by the way, for those of you on Twitch, I did put up a new little thing on there if you guys want me to go ahead and eat properly. It's called Treaties, and I don't mean to advertise it or anything like that, but it literally, I found it, I thought it was cool. I thought, especially if we're ever going to do like long streams like this, like continuously, you guys can literally like purchase like, oh, get Edgar food, and it'll like automatically like bring food over to my place. So it's pretty cool. But anyway, yeah, I'm just throwing that out there just because I found a link and I was like, I did that. And I will be honest, the edits that I put in there are fucking hilarious, like the descriptions that I put in for the food. So yeah, but anyway, aside from that, let's talk about this. What is the first thing that you can go ahead and talk about in terms of projection? Well, we'll start off with projection. Projection in this regard, and especially when you're talking about that, how many times have our parents projected their anger or their emotion towards their partner, i.e. a husband, wife, onto their kids? I've seen that happen all the time. I see that happen every single day where, parents get, like, will be mad at their partner and they'll They'll be like, oh, well, it's little Michael's fault for not winning the state championship. It's like, what are you talking about? Why are you projecting your emotions onto a child, or onto your animals? Sometimes people use their animals as a way to like project. What the? Okay. So now in this show, how often do you think that we might see projection from their parents onto their kids? Okay, a displacement of emotions is substituting an object versus a person. So for example, a big displacement that might be is like, I piss you off and you punch the wall. What the fuck did the wall do to you? You're not projecting your emotions onto the wall. You're quite literally using the wall as a substitute to let out your emotions. Kicking someone, turning into violence essentially is turning into a very aggressive way, which is why a lot of DV cases have to go through a special DV training with counselors and therapists to be able to talk about that. The wall existed, it's got to go down. Okay, Shakat, how does projection confuse you? Let's talk about that. Maybe we can clear that up for those on YouTube that might need it as well. But anyway, as you type up, I'm going to go ahead and just continue. Yeah, projection tends to be we take our emotions and then we set them on someone else, even if it's like in unhealthy ways. And yeah. So one of the clearest ways is, i.e., how do you project your emotions? Okay, let's say that you've had a really shitty day. Yeah, absolutely dog shit day. And you go out, what's the first thing that you're going to do? Yeah. You're going to start thinking that other people might, in a negative way, they might be seeing you in a negative way already. You're going to start using that to project about what they say. If they say something like, oh man, today's been a rough day, you might even interpret that as today's completely shitty because of you, so on and so forth. It can come off in that regard. Projection can also be positive in that you're extremely happy and someone's like, what a day. And you're like, oh yeah, what a day indeed. It's so good. It's such a great day. That's sort of the point, is like projecting your emotions onto someone else, another situation, another thing. So as they type in their responses, it's really important to go ahead and clear that up. Repression, on the other hand, is quite literally like, okay, you've had a traumatic event happen to you, i.e. a breakup. I'm like, Kraith, for example, since he's the first name that popped up when I was saying that. Let's talk about your breakup. He's like, what breakup? What are you talking about? A breakup doesn't exist. Nothing happened. We're all good. You I have nothing to say. Sometimes, and that's the thing, is sometimes, in scenarios like that, no, in Kraith, it can get that way, and especially if you're a victim of SA or DV. In case you guys don't know what that means, I'd suggest you go ahead and type them. I can't say it out loud because of TOS, but individuals that have gone through some hard trauma will often repress those memories so they don't have to deal with it on the daily. And sometimes even letting in a little can re-traumatize everyone all over again. And it's a defense mechanism because all of us use it to some point or another to not have to deal with certain scenarios, with certain things, and it's quite literally just holding it down and not really showing anything, Denial, of course, denial and repression can be very similarly tied together. That's something that you guys can go ahead and say. Repression's more like holding it in, not wanting to share it out. Denial is more like straight up like, nope, absolutely not, did not happen. So you guys can start already seeing, that a lot of this comes into play with Rudius and with the family and with all of the characters that were being introduced. I have issues with Carl Jung, Masters of Element, just because a lot of Carl Jung is also very contested, especially when it comes to his own psychoanalysis. But I'll get into that at a later time. Not so much, I've read a lot of the stuff for Carl Jung in general. I think Brady and I had to do that for a good portion of our class. But yeah, there's a lot of contention with him and Freud and all of these individuals. But nonetheless, you'll probably see me bring Carl Jung up probably next episode. No. No, it's not like like for example, Freud is also very contentious, and a lot of his own belief systems can be automatically like attributed. Even Anna Freud in this scenario with defense mechanisms, very contentious events with a lot of her own personal stuff. You know, Freud in general, in case you didn't know, is the reason why there is a big push. I think Freud instilled during Jung's times. There's a big push for therapists to not be with their clients, which should be general knowledge. Why? Because back then, yeah, they would you'd open up to them, and you know, because of propinquity, which is when you start feeling attracted to people because of the amount of time that you're opening up, how like you know that you're with them, how close you're being with them, so on and so forth. You know, they would go ahead and do stuff like that. Tell me about your mother. But that's what I'm saying is like, even though there's a lot of contentious aspects in pretty much any psychologist, you can always pick up some pretty good information out of whatever it may be and apply it and start to find out a little bit more of human behavior and what's there and not there, you know? So anyway, regression is quite literally, yeah, moving back through time. So i.e., you know, say that, who am I going to use? All right, I'll use Mr. Stabby. Yeah, there's always a nugget information. Yeah, exactly, Master. But let's go with Mr. Stabby for this one, for regression. Let's say Mr. Stabby's had a really, really rough day at work, and then he comes home, and boom, another traumatic event happens. It's like the straw that broke the camel's back, and he decides to go into his oral stage, start sucking on his thumb, and wet the bed. He like regressed into a childlike behavior. And that's why sometimes you can see like individuals that are adults, when faced with a scenario that they can't get away from, i.e. cheating or something like that, you'll see them regress into very immature states, or sometimes, or even narcissistic states, where they won't take the blame, or if they do take the blame, they'll try and manipulate it, manipulate the narrative, manipulate stories, because a lot of people tend to regress. Regression always, yeah, it's like a weird tantrum. Well, not necessarily a tantrum, it's because sometimes people can get stuck in those stages. So for example, if you've had a really bad traumatic event that can impact your memory or whatever, and you regress back into the time, you know, like let's say 7 to 10 years old, because that's your safe space, you can stay there for a while. No one knows. That's the thing, is regression is all like, I don't know how to put it. It's like our own defense mechanism that our brain puts up. That's our own coping strategy. I hope this makes sense, guys. And when it comes to Rudius specifically and the family, looking into this and keeping in mind how they project, how the displacement is happening, how they're taking out their frustration, i.e. Paul hitting Rudius is probably not the best way to do something, or even like, you know, a regression from like trying to like be normal to crying because you fucked up, you know, even though you've had this mental maturity. Or, you know, one of the biggest things is sublimation, right? i.e. I'm not going to address my issues, so what I'm going to do is put all my anger into, for example, martial arts. Please don't do that. Martial arts is about discipline, not about anger and no mercy, or Cobra Kai random shit, because apparently all the kids are into that nowadays. And I have a bunch of little kids that come into like the MMA place where I'm at, where I teach at, and they're like, teach us about Cobra Kai. And it's like, no, it's about restraint, it's about discipline, it's about even finding the psychology behind movement and, you know, fighting for that matter. But anyway, I hope this makes sense. For those of you on YouTube, I hope this helps a little bit, especially when you're actually trying to use psychological words to describe something that's happening either in this show or any show. You at least have something that you can come back to, talk about, and even, you know, reference at a later point. These are discussion points that can be had and talked about whether or not, you know, for example, is Rudius projecting his feelings, or is it more like he's just in denial of them, you know? So 110%. Anyway, with that being said, this is already going to be a long video. I genuinely appreciate everyone being here. That's going to be 2 for the night, because this one went on way longer than expected. I really appreciate every single one of you guys being here. If you're on YouTube, join our Discord, have the chat with us, go on general talk with us. We even have a special section for every single anime that you see uploaded up there, even the video games that are to come. Also, you know, with that being said, join us on Twitch every Friday and Sunday. You know, those are for sure days that usually happen. Although next Sunday is still a little bit in contention, just because I was planning on going out to another town. I might have even done like an IRL stream maybe. But yeah, it just depends. Anyway, I really appreciate everyone being here. Follow us on Twitch, follow us on YouTube, subscribe. A majority of you guys that watch the content aren't subscribed, but yet apparently it's on Reddit. Thanks. I really appreciate it. I hope you Redditors have a good day. You know, thanks for the stay. Hope you enjoyed the stay. Drink some water, practice some self-care, and I'll talk to you guys next time. All right, Twitch. I love y'all. Stay safe as well. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This ran on way longer than I thought it would. I really, really appreciate all of you guys being here. And yeah, I hope you guys learned something. Actually, quite a bit in that regard. Stay safe, practice some self-care, and I will definitely talk to you guys. I'll be on Discord for a bit, probably eating a salad or something. But yeah, practice some self-care, guys. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.